Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us later than normal. We wanted to bring Lon on tonight because he's got a bunch of neat stuff to tell us. And so we decided to run the stream at 9 p.m. rather than put him off again in the next week because we've gotten sick a couple of times and we got had to move stuff for gigs. So we don't want to do that to Lon again. So we're going to do it now. Okay. So Lon is a really well known person in cryptid circles and Fortean circles, and he considers himself to be a Fortean. So Charles Fort had a philosophy about all of this, and Lon's one of its his adherents and followers and readers and so forth. So Lon, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about Charles Fort and why you're a Fortean, and then you can jump right into your fantastic stories because that's why they're here.
Well, thanks for having me, first of all. And Charles Fort, he's an American writer, researcher, looked into a lot of weird stuff, kind of before like anybody really did mainstream, but he really wasn't mainstream. He specialized in all types of anomalous phenomena, you want to call it that. And there's terms like Fortean or Fortiana or there's a lot of things associated with him, basically because he was kind of the first person to ever publish a lot of the unexplained in his books and his other writings. He wrote, I think, he wrote about 5 or 6 books, but there was two in particular that he wrote concerning 14 research or 14 phenomena, and that one was the Book of the Damned and Low. Those are the two best known. So, as you know, his whole concept has kind of lived on over the past century or so, and when you're someone like myself or others who don't necessarily specialize in a particular phenomena, we're kind of the eclectic investigators, and we basically use it as a 14 example. So that's why I consider myself a 14 researcher.
So the two of us are eclectic experiencers, and the one thing I'm trying to play expert in is UFO stuff with
Right.
sensors and stuff. So look, I know you got a ton of stories, and you know you've been out doing investigating. So our audience will definitely want to hear about them.
Well, I mean, it just depends what you want to talk about. I can talk about anything in particular. I mean, I've had a couple of experiences over the years, and I've really actually started this whole thing when I was young. My first experience occurred back in 1967. I was 9 years old, and I was born and raised in this area, in Hanover, Pennsylvania. The area is just east of Gettysburg. So I was a little history nerd, so I liked history, and fascinated me Gettysburg, and of course when back in the day kids could get on bikes and just ride anywhere they want to. And I'd take that 16 or 13-mile ride to Gettysburg on some Saturday afternoons during the summer. So I was really aware of what was going on there. But, I always knew there was something up with me. I didn't really know what it was. Of course, back in the 60s, nobody talked about paranormal investigators or investigations and such. They just talked about ghosts, and that's about the extent of it. And what happened was one particular July afternoon, it was pretty hot that day, and I was down in the area of the Valley of Death, which is in between Little Round Top, um, the Wheat Field, and Devil's Den. It's an area that's had a lot of known activity for a long, long time. I mean, people would talk about it even not but a few years after the battle. So I'm on my bike and I'm on the access road going towards Devil's Den, and all of a sudden there's like a big TV screen opened up in front of me, and I literally was in the battle. I saw soldiers, heard gunfire, smelled gunpowder. All the senses were heightened, and it lasted for about 30 seconds or so. and then it just vanished. Well, that's when I knew something was up. I mean, I didn't really know what was going on. Um, it's not like I live in a haunted house or had any access to normal investigations at 9 years old, but I knew I was seeing things that not everybody could. And I was sensing things too. And as time went on, it became more and more prevalent. And when I got into high school, I was literally doing paranormal investigations in the early 70s. And, you know, somebody would ask you what you do. And, I mean, just in high school. And I say, well, I investigate the paranormal. And they kind of look at you weird, like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I did. And I kind of did it off and on for years and years. And, when I moved down to Maryland, I lived down outside of Baltimore for almost 40 years and, kind of raised a family and everything. And then I eventually moved back here to Pennsylvania back in 2016. But I had been involved with a lot of different investigations, and in particular, the Fortean investigations that involved cryptids. And after I had my Bigfoot encounter back in '81, I that kind of did it for me. I didn't really think much about Bigfoot before that. I knew about the whole thing down in down in Arkansas with the films and everything that were coming out, and I was aware of that, but I really I'd heard of the Patterson Gimlin film and all. But I just didn't really pay much attention to it. I was mostly involved with going into homes and businesses and using my abilities to try to find out what was going on for people. So, but after I had that encounter outside of Sykesville back in '81, that kind of changed my mind. That got me really thinking about what's really going on. And I continued to look into cryptids in particular, and then in '88, I had a bizarre encounter near Conewago Boy Scout Camp Conewago, just north of New Oxford, Pennsylvania, and that was a winged humanoid, a red-eyed winged humanoid, as a matter of fact, very similar to what people were seeing down or had been seeing down in the Point Pleasant, West Virginia area. So yeah, and I didn't really say a whole lot about that. I was with two other gentlemen. One guy I grew up with. They were all scout leaders, and they were concerned about some things that were going on during that summer because this was in October. So we went out there and did some investigations, and we ran into this thing after the second day, and it kind of left an impression. And after that's when I really started getting involved in the winged humanoid phenomena. Then, of course, when these sightings started in Chicago back in 2011, though after we went back and started doing research, these things have been going on for at least a decade before that. So, yeah, that's kind of been my main focus as far as investigations with the phenomena in Chicago and all. But we've done a lot of other investigations as well. So it keeps me busy, it keeps me out of trouble. But that's what I do.
It's also interesting. So uh, I love that every time I have an experience and it causes my mind to have to open up and accept things that before I didn't accept.
Mhm.
After that, I notice them more. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, that does happen. Um, I think after you have an encounter or something significant like that, I think it kind of raises your intuition as far as that type of creature and all. I don't know if that's true or not, but it just seems just like a lot of the evidence that we've investigated in Chicago and other winged humanoid sightings. It seems that for the most part, that they pick the people they want to see them.
I was
I
gonna
mean,
ask that. Yeah.
they can be in a crowd, and many of the reports that we received out of that Chicagoland area, there would be a big crowd of people, and only one or two people would actually see it. Uh, and we still don't understand what's going on there, how they if they do have that ability, but if they do, that's quite significant.
Hmm.
But I have learned that that seems to be something that is somewhat connected to that phenomenon itself. Now, of course, when you're talking about Bigfoot, Dogman, upright canines, and other types of cryptids, there always does seem to be that some ability where they can connect with the witness to some degree, uh, either by some type of either infrasound or some type of psychic connection somehow. I've heard it so many times that it's almost standard now. Many times when you talk to someone who's had a very close encounter with a cryptid,
Hmm.
I'd say most people that do have that type of connection with it. So that just adds to the whole phenomena. But you know, th- there's just so much of it we really don't know. And hopefully, as time goes by, we're going to start getting more answers. At least I hope so.
I have so many questions. Okay, let me start with this. Are there types of when people talk about? I like the Dogman stories. I've never seen Bigfoot or Dogman, but it interests me, and the Dogman scares the shit out of me the most. But it's still interesting. But I've never heard of anyone saying that they physically got hurt or killed. It's usually they just like to terrorize them. Are there cryptids that do hunt people? Is that like an unknown thing, or are they just like to mess with people?
It's pretty rare. Uh, the cryptid canines, the closest I think that it's really come to terrorizing anybody other than looking at this thing because they're usually huge. I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't want to come up against it, but it does seem that they will occasionally bluff charge, just a couple steps, and try to warn whoever is in front of them that they're there, they're not going to back off, and they usually get the message. I really don't have any examples that I've investigated or looked into where there was physical contact with one of these beings, though
Okay.
it has come close. We're working on some investigations down in Alabama now, and from from central Alabama up into the Birmingham area, then a little bit closer up into Huntsville. We've had some sightings and encounters and stuff. And this is something we've been looking into. I'm working with two other individuals down in Birmingham, and we've been quietly collecting a little bit of evidence here, a little evidence there. I've heard some of the audio. But when we start getting more answers, then I'll eventually release it and put out what I believe is going on. But it's very interesting. I just wish we knew more of what the phenomena really is. But there have been a lot of sightings down there in the past couple of years.
I got to tell you. So, as widespread as the sightings of interactions with footprint evidence, etc., Bigfoot, you would think, well, we got to find a den of them sooner or later. It is really passing strange that they can flip in and out of our perception and be gone, and there's nothing you can do to find them.
Yeah, some of the old timers don't want to admit to that, but I think as time has gone on, there have been a few that have kind of opened their mind up a little bit to the possibility that these things very, very well be interdimensional or some type of traveler, wormhole, or some other gateway. We just don't really know what it is, but I'm pretty certain that for the most part, what people see, especially singular beings, is probably something that was brought there or got through there somehow through some mechanism. Of course, I believe there are indigenous species of the Bigfoot or whatever race, because I think it is probably one species with several races. But of course, in the Pacific Northwest and down around the Gulf and down into Florida, the whole way around to Texas, I think there are indigenous groups there. But for the most part, I think everywhere else we're talking about interdimensional beings.
Yeah. So the kind of the evidence that convinced me was these people would find these footprints,
Hmm.
and you'd go, okay, what did you get? He says, well, it was kind of weird. I got only one side, all right side and no left side. So where was the left leg? And I'm going in my head, in the other dimension.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I used to work along with J.C. Johnson out in when he was living out in New Mexico, and there was a lot of strange cases out there on the Navajo reservation, and many times he he contact me and say, I just had another one of these, one or two tracks, and then they just disappeared like these things went through a wall. Um, it happened a lot. It really did. I mean, it was to the point where it was almost becoming comical, where they'd have a wide stride or one or two prints, and then you wouldn't see anything after, like they sprouted wings and took off or went
Oh,
somewhere else. So that phenomena was not too unusual out there. Now, occasionally that'll happen in this neck of the woods, where somebody would see one print here or one print there, and that would be it. Especially, well, we're not far from Micho State Forest, and that happens a lot up there, where we'll just get one print. But we do get a lot of sightings at Micho for whatever reason, particularly down in the Caledonia section and along Route 30, because I've had many witnesses telling me that they'd be driving up Route 30, either east or west, and they'd have a Bigfoot crossing the road because they're collecting roadkill. They would literally see them pick up something, throw it over their shoulder, and run back into the woods. So
wow.
that's happened several times, and there are cryptid canines down in the southern part towards South Mountain as well. So it's an area where there's a lot of phenomena. Pennsylvania, Maryland, down there where you are, we've done a lot of investigations. The winged humanoid sightings are somewhat prevalent around here as well, down into Maryland, because Maryland is pretty well known for, of course, the dwale or the upright canines, but that does happen, and there's been a lot of winged being sightings throughout Maryland, the snallygaster and all types of other things,
Mhm.
or what they called them back then. But there have been several of the winged humanoids as well.
Are
So
they mostly in the western part of the state or all over?
yeah, most of the upright canines are around Frederick County, west over into Washington County. Now we did have a possibility of something over at Fort Deposit, just across the river from you all over in
Yeah.
Cecil County.
Yeah.
And there's a farm over there that we looked into. A lot of UFO activity as well.
Oh yeah, you
And
were talking about that.
yeah, it was pretty strange. Uh, let's see. Tim Renner was with me, and Chad. Uh, yeah, Chad, the other investigator, was with us as well. And we went down there after I got a call from the girl who lived there. It was a horse farm, and
Mhm.
many times they seem to be attracted by livestock, but they are attracted to horses for whatever reason. And I'm talking about canines and Bigfoot for whatever reason.
Yep.
And what was going on was, when an animal would die, they would just bury it there on the farm. Well, these things were showing up around the areas where these things were buried. And they weren't really digging through, though they seemed to dig a little bit, but they never really actually pulled anything out. But this farm in particular had a lot of weird energy around, a lot of dead energy, to be honest.
Yeah.
And a lot of UFO sightings. We did get one really good video of a very bright UFO during the day that was above a tree line, above a wooded area. But yeah, it was just a lot going on there. Now we haven't heard much about anything, you know, happening down there since then. But I do believe there was something there, and of course that area where they were, and you probably noticed this. A lot of the Amish are moving down from Pennsylvania and buying farms down there. So
Yeah.
when they do see something, they're not going to say anything to anybody. So they pretty well keep to themselves as far as that goes. Though I did have one Amish guy up near Strasburg contact the guy who picked up his milk on his farm to distribute. I mean, to take it to the dairy, and he described to him about a Bigfoot-like creature that they saw in the field one day. And now I never got a chance to talk to the guy. I mean, to the actual witness themselves, but you know, they came forward to him, and he told me that this thing had made its way up into the lawn, or to the
Oh my God.
property. It walked up there, and they were standing there on the porch watching this thing, and it literally turned around, started walking toward a barn, and just vanished.
Howdy, neighbor. I'm going to be walking away now and then vanish.
Yeah, just gone. So, yeah, that Lancaster County has been pretty busy. I mean, over the years, the Alba Twitch, that, I've only ever had a really small Bigfoot seen once, but that was over in York County, over toward Red Line. But I mean, as far as being reported to me, but historically, up and down the Susquehanna River on both sides, there's been a lot of, a lot of UFO as well, but Bigfoot activity.
Yeah, with all these Native American sites over here, up and down the Susquehanna, they're going to see some strange stuff. Just what can I say? Yes, and Dave Williams wants to know what do you hear about Vermont?
Vermont. About the only sightings that have gotten out of Vermont have been either there've been some Bigfoot, very, very scarce Bigfoot. It's mostly been up in the White Mountains area. Occasionally somebody will see one around Lake Champlain or something like that. But I don't get a whole lot from Vermont. Of course, people who live up there and do investigations, they do get a lot of reports. So, but I don't get that many. Most of the reports I get out of Vermont are just unexplained phenomena.
The only time, one time 3 years ago, and it was by White Marsh, Maryland on 43, right by Lockheed Martin and what I'm talking about. I'm in the parking lot, and I swear to God, I thought it was a small airplane, but then the wings started to flap, and it had a long tail. I didn't see the head or face, and it was going towards the Lockheed Martin, actually. And I don't know what the hell that was. It almost looked like a pterodactyl?
Pterodactyl, yeah.
But I didn't see the face, but the body. And it's amazing. Do people see things like this too?
Yeah, the pterosaur sightings are seen down that area, all up and down the East Coast. We get them here in Pennsylvania, but most of them are seen in the upper Midwest. In fact, there have been a few people that I have talked to about this over the years, and some people do seem to think there's a flyway that comes up from Mexico. Many times they see them along the same routes, going up through Texas into Oklahoma, eventually going into Kansas and Iowa, then going up to the Wisconsin area. But there have been a lot of sightings in those states in particular. So is there a flyway? I don't know. But then again, what are we looking at? Are we looking at something that's a portal traveler, or are we looking at something that's a time slip? We really don't know.
Right.
But many times when you do get phenomena like that of something that just doesn't really fit, you really try to wonder what it is. And of course, the whole supernatural aspect of it comes into play. So we always have that in the back of our mind. Of course, when hopefully we'll be able to prove some of this at some point. I mean, it's all theory and conjecture at this point now. So hopefully something will spring loose.
You ever get dragon sightings from people?
Yeah, I do. Most of the dragon sightings I have received have been out in New Jersey. We had a particular amount of time back in the late 90s, early 2000s. We had several dragon sightings. I'm talking about huge beings that look literally like European dragon lore, what you'd see in Game of Thrones or whatever. And yeah, some of those sightings are pretty dramatic. I had a couple out in California, and we actually had one in Chicago as well. So
Wow.
yeah, so it's something that does pop up every once in a while. Now of course, we don't really have any genome or anything to do with dragons. I mean, they're supposed to be a mythological being, but why people see some of these things we really don't know.
Okay, can I
Go for it. You're doing great.
Do you ever get people calling in about vampires or something that's similar, like a humanoid with fangs? Really? Okay.
Yeah, I get all kinds of stuff. I've had a couple of vampire reports in areas where you would believe that there were vampires, they'd be there, because New Orleans and down in Louisiana are probably the most I get sightings and encounters, and of course over in Eastern Europe. I've had several, in fact, that people have believed that they've had encounters with a vampire. But then again, you really don't know what to believe. I believe people see something that they may think is a vampire, but with the pulp culture and horror and everything else that you see in the media, when they see something that looks similar to it, that's the first thing they think about, and then that's what they say they're seeing. And yeah, you kind of got to be a little open-minded, but sometimes, and look, I take people's reports pretty serious. I mean, if they take the time to contact me to tell them what they had experienced, I'm going to go with it as long as I can, unless I prove otherwise. And that's just like this whole phenomenon in Chicago. I mean, we have had a lot of reports, but we do believe there's about 180 of these reports that may have had some actual anecdotal evidence, but something that they saw in with their descriptions. And many of these people didn't even know that this has been going on in Chicago, in the Chicagoland area, for a long time. So yeah, some of the reports you get just kind of make you scratch your head and wonder what they're really seeing. But in that investigation, and it still continues, it's pretty consistent.
Okay, so you get a new case, whatever it is, cryptid, ghosts, UFOs, whatever. Somebody says, "Hey, I got something going on." How does Lon proceed to do an investigation?
Well, it depends on what's going on. First of all, I want to talk to him. Many times it starts out with either a phone call coming to me, or they send an email, and we'll eventually get together and talk about it. And what I do is, when I get on the phone with them, I tell them, well, start from the beginning, tell me everything that happened. Don't be afraid to leave anything out. Just don't embellish on it. I mean, I want the actual information. I want to know what you saw. And occasionally you get someone who will embellish on these sightings. I mean, it happens. For some reason, some witnesses believe that you're going to believe them more if they embellish on it, try to make you happy, and that just doesn't work out. So, but when they're explaining what they had seen, I just let them go and talk and tell me what they believe they saw, and then I'll start asking questions. And it just depends on how they respond. Many times the characteristics of what they saw or what they're experiencing or whatever, it'll come into the mainstream of what does usually be included in reports. That includes abduction reports as well. And, depending on that, and either consultation with some of the people on my team, we'll decide whether we're going to go and look into it. If it's close to me, I'll go look at it, or Tim and I, or Chad and I will work on it around this area. But we've got people all over the country on the team. So hopefully it's close enough to where we can get boots on the ground. But normally, if I don't have anybody close by, I can find somebody. So, yeah, so we try to look in as much as we can. You just can't look at everything.
Yeah, I know.
Because I get reports daily, and but if it's something that raises piques my interest a bit, I'm going to look in as best as I can. And of course, without me having that experience with the winged humanoid out at Camp Conawaga, of course, what was going on in Chicago really piqued my interest, and that's why I just jumped on all of that. Because MUFON was actually getting the first reports, but if it's not a craft or something nuts and bolts, MUFON are usually try to stay away from it.
Yeah.
And I have talked to enough investigators and field investigators with MUFON to realize that they just feel like if it's not a craft, they're wasting their time. I mean, even something where it involves possibly an otherworldly being involved with the sighting itself, they just kind of discount that. And that's been my main argument about them for a long time now.
Right.
But as time went on and people were seeing these things out in the Chicago area and they're reporting to MUFON, well, it would get on the MUFON CMS, and we'd look at it, and I talked to somebody in MUFON. They just didn't really care about it, and they wouldn't look into it. Eventually, when they started searching, the witness started searching for it, they found us, and then they contact us because they just got tired of waiting around for them to contact them.
Right.
Right.
So we picked up a lot of cases like that as well.
So you have a team. So approximate size of your team and the kind of people that are on it.
Well, we got about 20 individuals who are just very interested in strange phenomena, and it kind of runs the gamut. I mean, people who were involved with a lot of different things. I've had some people working with us who were pretty well known. Rosemary Ellen Golly actually started with us when we first formed the team, when we were looking into the Chicago phenomena very early. And she was basically following up on sighting reports I'd get, and she'd call them back and verify everything. So we were, but of course she's not around, and she, when she got sick, she kind of backed off. But yeah, I mean, it's been, the folks on the team are pretty responsive. They're enthusiasts as well as researchers and investigators. I'd say most of them are involved with cryptids, but there's other things as well. We've got a couple psychics on the team, and we got at least one remote viewer who I used to work with years ago when I trained remote viewing, and she was on that team I was on, and she lives in Australia, and she's got a worldwide team that they do cases. And they have done several for us, and it's led to some very interesting results and phenomena that we have reported, but there's more we're working on all the time.
When someone remote views a cryptid or other being, do they ever report back that those beings know that they're being remote viewed?
Some people believe they do in some cases. I went through an RV back in 2011, and the woman I learned how to RV from, she was an actual remote viewer. She worked for MI6 in British intelligence,
Well,
and she retired. her and I hooked up, and she was kind enough to teach me how to remote view. It took about 6 months of being on Skype every day. But we were doing dry runs and doing cases, and she decided that she was going to send me off world one time. And when we started going through all the steps and all the procedures and the phases, what we call them in coordinate remote viewing or scientific remote viewing, it was just myself as the viewer, and she was monitoring. And if a problem would show up, she'd get me out of it, or well, we were keeping notes together as we were going through it. RV lasts anywhere from, I mean, if it's done with all the phases can go from anywhere to 2 to 4 hours. It just depends on what's going on. But I went on this off-world RV, and what was interesting was where I showed up. It was this planet. I don't know what the planet was. I know it was very rocky. It was very red in color. But there was a large opening on the side of a mountain or a hill or something that I went through. I walked through, and I was describing it as I was going, with all the characteristics, physical characteristics, what I could see, smell, everything to do with senses. And you go through that as you go through the phases. And I approached an area where there seemed like there were two humans sitting at some type of console. And they were looking through a window of some type, and they were watching something. I couldn't really see what it was. But as I was standing there, and this is hard to believe, but this huge T-Rex looking thing came walking down the hallway. He had a vest on, but it looked like a T-Rex. I'd say it was probably about 10, 12 foot tall.
Oh.
But I'm watching this thing, and it started eyeing me. It was kind of, the side eye, you could see it was looking, it was keeping still. And I started moving a bit, and it was following me.
Oh my God.
I told the monitor, I said, what was going on, and she knew it. She pulled me out.
Okay.
So that was a bit frightening. I have heard other viewers mention the same thing, that occasionally they believe that the subject or someone who's part of the view itself will recognize you. Many times it has to do with a remote view that has to do with extraterrestrial or aliens or other worlds and such. It's not necessarily a phenomenon that's happening here on Earth. But I have heard it happen to other people. And in fact, there was a client I had worked with for many years by the name of David Eckhart, who he and his family have been involved with several reptilian abductions and other things, experimentation. He's seen a lot of different things. And some of his videos and audio that he supplied me at the time were just fantastic. I mean, it was just really, really bizarre that what was going on. But we decided to try to do an RV and maybe get some insight as to where he was going and what was showing up there. And on all three occasions, we would get to phase 3. There were usually 5 phases we used. We get to phase 3, and it just went dead. It's like they knew it, and they cut off everything. We couldn't pick up on a thing. It's not like they cut off communication because they're really not communicating with you. But the signals and everything that you pick up during the RV, it just went dead.
Wow.
So we decided, well, man, that was just a waste of time. And that's the only time it's ever happened to me. Now, there have been times when I have been involved with malevolent beings, in particular, incubus or succubus type of investigations where that will happen. It's very rare, but it will happen sometimes. But for the most part, that just doesn't happen. So, it's a weird phenomenon. It's something we really just don't understand.
I wonder if, what do you call them, hitchhikers, where they come back, they know you come back. But also, have you gotten a lot of incubus, succubus situation? You're like, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately, many times the situation has been with a female who would somehow decide that they are lonely and they want something in their life, and they'll
Oh,
do some type of stupid manifestation
that's
or
stupid.
do a spell or something, and something will show up,
Oh,
and they have a hell of a time getting rid of it. It has happened. I have done at least 4 cases like that.
Wow.
Yeah. And I mean, it gets to the point where they really start getting scared.
yeah.
They start seeing bruises and scratches and everything, and they're feeling bad in the morning, and they don't really know what's going on. They feel the movement around them, and that's when they get a hold of me or someone else and try to figure out what's really going on with it. Um, those instances, for the most part, if the person who's being affected by it can kind of tamp down the negative energy and stop allowing themselves to start conjuring this stuff up, um, we can usually get rid of it,
Mhm.
as opposed to like a poltergeist case, because that's entirely different. And
Do those linger? The poltergeist?
well, a poltergeist basically is not even a spirit. I mean, it's a human manifested entity. It takes on many characteristics of a spiritual entity, but for the most part, they're usually malevolent. Um, Many times, the person who is actually doing the manifestation just do not know that it's around them, but
Mhm.
this thing is causing havoc within a home or a family situation or whatever. And yeah, they're hard to get rid of. It takes literally a lot of time working with the person to get them to slow down that negative energy and try to keep from triggering the activity, just like a dysfunction in the family, or someone did something or got sick, or we got a lot of kids that are uncontrollable and all. I mean, a lot of things can cause it, but for the most part, the persons doing the manifestations just don't realize it's going on.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I don't get a whole lot of those. I try, honestly, I try to stay away from poltergeist cases because they're just a lot of work.
Mhm.
But I have done some cases involving kids, and many times when I do get a case that involves children, I'm usually putting that to the top of the list. And in fact, as time has gone on over the years, I've worked with a lot of families where kids were gifted and had abilities, and kind of took a few of them under my wing to try to get them to understand what was really going on and how they could, you know, get to understand it more.
Mhm.
One in particular, there was a young lady. I started working with her family when she was 8 years old. She's 21 now, and she's turned out to be a pretty good little psychic. So, yeah, so she understands the whole phenomena. But many times when people do have things like this, any type of unexplained activity, a lot of them have gifts.
That's true.
They're what we call beacons. I mean, they attract this energy and they attract a lot of this. So, yeah, so we can work with them. But when you're talking about poltergeists or even shadow people, it's very difficult
Yeah.
to resolve a case like that unless you're going to get full cooperation out of the actual people who are involved with it.
Do you mind?
Go for it. Keep going. You're doing great.
Okay. Mimics. What exactly are they? I had one experience after my mom passed. I heard my mom in my ear say, "I'm here with you," but it was a little off, and it felt a little off. It was just strange, since though I've read that they call them mimics.
Well, it could have actually been your mom. I
Yeah.
mean, first of all, and not all the time when people hear someone that says there's someone who had passed, do they sound like them?
Yeah.
Most times there's no communication at all, but there are certain touching and feeling sensations around them, or smells or things like that, where they recognize that the energy is around them. It may very well be a family member or a friend or whoever. As far as mimics go, most of the mimics that I have received are cases where uh, it's some type of being that, in particular, these crawler humanoid type beings that have been showing up for the last 15 so years. Many times people experience what they call mimicking. In other words, they'll be out, say they're out camping, they're out there for a couple of days, and then they start hearing their own voice coming from the woods, or the person they're camping with, a voice coming from the woods, and they know it's not them.
Uh-huh.
Many times it's one of these creatures that is learning to mimic, or
Oh, good.
and
Yeah.
it does happen. That whole crawler thing, we just don't know. I wrote a book about it and still don't understand it. So there you go. It's really not an explained or type of phenomena where we not even get very good answers about what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Many times it's the same thing, and people are experiencing it. It's worldwide as well. So why they're here? Are they interdimensional? Probably, but there could be some other situations as well. Some people believe they're aliens. I don't know if they are or not.
They're around the Appalachian Mountains a lot, from what I've been, which is interesting. There's a lot of shit around there.
Well, the whole Appalachian Trail thing, the whole way up and down the trail, especially in the Mid-Atlantic, there's a lot of weird phenomena that happens on there. Unfortunately, there are a lot of murders that happen on the Appalachian Trail as well. So there's a lot of bad actors that show up there occasionally. But I do get quite a few Bigfoot sightings along the Appalachian Trail in this area.
Interesting. Okay, sorry, I'll shut up.
You're doing great. You're doing terrific. What are you worried about? So I took a bunch of Cub Scouts right before they became Boy Scouts, and we camped out at Gettysburg.
Mm-hmm.
And he got a little active with the cannon shot and the musket ball firing and the hooting and hollering as the soldiers went at each other. And I'm told that happens regularly.
Yeah, it's pretty common. There's a lot of residual energy and a lot of stuff that a lot of sounds that just show up. Particular areas where it does happen. I don't know where you were. You can't camp on the battlefield anymore. I mean, I used to do it when I was a kid, but you can't do it anymore. I saw.
Well, when did that stop?
Oh, that stopped in the early '90s, somewhere around there.
Yeah. So I was first active in the Scouts in the '90s, but most likely it would have been in the 2000s when I took them. So it's probably stopped by then.
Was it an area off the battlefield?
Yeah, it was just off of it, but I mean not far.
Yeah, well, you're going to get a lot of. You
could hear it.
The cannon fire, the apparitions, the gunpowder smells, soldiers popping up here and there during the day as well. Yeah, it's pretty common, and there are certain entities that just show up all the time, and they're just residual entities. But many times I'll get a photograph of one person, get a photograph from somebody else, and it's the same damn thing. It just looks a little different. It's in the same area. So, it's a lot going on out there. And when I go there, I just spend too much time there myself because there's certain areas that just seem to be more active to me in particular. So,
that's true.
But it is what it is. And I always like taking people out there and showing them around and a few things. So it's fascinating, and it's just not the battlefield. The whole town itself has got something going on there. You can run into all types of things. I have done several investigations in residence in Gettysburg or around Gettysburg, and most of the time it's just a wayward spirit that just doesn't really understand what's going on. A lot of times, they don't even realize they're dead after all these years, and a lot of it has to do with the battle or times right before or after the battle, but it's usually in that time era, maybe from the 1850s up to the early 1900s.
That's what's weird. How do they? Does the other side look just like this? I mean, I don't understand. I've never understood why they didn't know they were dead.
Um, I guess it depends on the situation. If they have suddenly died, say a soldier was shot, he didn't realize he was shot, he died, didn't, his consciousness kind of carried on with the life force is strong. And they're in a situation where they really don't know what they're doing. They believe they're alive, but nobody can communicate with them. They try to communicate. That's a haunting right there, because that's normally what a haunting is a being or a spiritual being trying to communicate. And
Mhm.
they're doing things that scare the hell out of the living, and that's a haunting. But they're normally just trying to communicate,
Yeah,
or just don't understand what their situation is. But
that's true.
yeah, so when you do get in, and particularly when you're RVing, and you do realize that you're dealing with an entity, uh, most times they will want to move on.
Mhm.
Now, but there have been times when they just don't want to, and of course, it's all free will, so you can't force them to go anywhere. And but we have been successful in moving them onto other levels as well.
Oh, well, this is two part. When my dad passed, I wanted to make double sure he knew, because whatever. So I wrote on a big piece of paper. I was like, "You died this day," just in case. I wanted to help him out, because we were buddies. But when they pass over, because they can still visit us whenever they want, or once they pass, they go into another life and reincarnate.
It's hard to explain. I have seen at least, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 regression therapy sessions. Um, and I've been involved with a few of those. I don't necessarily recommend them.
Hmm.
Some people just can't handle them. But it's interesting listening to it, because when they do go under, and that they're trying to explain what's going on, uh, it really does seem like they're seeing an individual, or seeing a spirit, or seeing an apparition, or whatever type of energy is manifesting. Now, you asked if these spirits can come back. In some cases they can. It depends how strong they are. Many times they can't. But
Okay.
if they do, if they do pass away, and the life force is still in an area where they did pass away, or where they used to frequent, and many times it's in areas far away from where they died at, that they used to frequent. And a lot of times they just don't realize that they're dead.
Mhm.
And that's when you start getting hauntings, and people start calling you and wondering what's going on, and was that grandma or grandpa or whoever it was, and you're trying to help them out.
Right.
But yeah, the situation is not constant. There's always something that kind of puts a wrench into the gears, because it's not always that easy to figure out. There have been times when I've worked on hauntings. I had one case in particular I worked on for 8 years. Uh, it was mostly attachments, but it was because of a situation where there was a lot of it happened near an airport, where there was a plane crash, and all these entities were moving in and out of the person's property where they were living at, and they were picking up attachments, and then there was other things being picked up and added to it, and it was a real mess. I mean, when they did move out of there and move to another area, um, some pretty good distance away from where they had been, many times they will hitch a ride with them. Unfortunately for this family, was that they ended up going into a house that was also haunted, that had a lot of bad energy going on. And we kind of compounded that with that case. But yeah, it took about 8 years till we finally got it fixed.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of dedication.
Well, it happens like unfortunately. I mean, it's not like what you see on TV. It's not like you go in, do this and that, and it's resolved, and it just doesn't work that way. You're putting the time into it, and many times, and I tell folks, if something happens, they're keeping records of what's going on. To contact me and let me know what's going on. I want to keep abreast of what the situation is in case I do have to do an RV or do some type of physical investigation. But I'm pretty well prepared before I go into that. I've learned my lesson. I've been psychically attacked twice now.
Ooh, that's not fun.
Yeah, I had I was doing a haunting up in Prince Edward Island, and the girl who had the attachment had contacted us, and we looked into it, and we started talking to her, and we just didn't know what was going on, but I believed it may have been an incubus thing, and because she was I thought it was an incubus, but from what she was telling us, and it just didn't seem that she was even conjuring this thing up, or there was something like that. But she was being violated, and that was concerning. So, and she had kids as well. So, long story short, it eventually turned out it was her father. Her father's energy. He was actually coming back and attacking her. And I got a little lax during the RV.
Yeah.
And I had to get pulled out because I ended up with a 13-inch laceration from my chest down to my belly button.
From her dad? Jesus.
Wow.
And another case, it happened during RV as well. I broke a rib on my right side. Something slammed me. I had to go to the hospital right then. It was right in the middle of an RV, but it broke a rib, and I could hardly breathe. And,
oh my God!
But these things do happen. Psychic attacks are real, and people talk about them, and a lot of people will make a joke about it and say, "Well, it's on your head or anything." Well, when you start having physical scars and physical maladies because of it, and even illness or some type of sickness. I think a lot of what I have gone through, I've kind of paid for over the years. It kind of accumulates. I think as I got older, it started to show itself. So, yeah. So that was, and I do protect myself, but occasionally something will slip through, or you have a mistake, and I'll admit it. I mean, I had mistakes, and you just got to really be careful.
Very careful. Yes. Very careful, especially with your words and intentions, because they will hop on in a split second if they can. Wait, what do you want?
So we don't see any of these things that Lala reads, people's deceased people, etc. I haven't seen any of them yet that look like or acted like a demon.
What was what I was trying to say? The only one time I had, it was before I knew Bob. I gave a read. I was on a dating site, which ended up being I read for people for free. I didn't actually get a date, but whatever. I helped people, and one was a Cuban guy, and I was talking to his deceased wife, and there was something with them. I don't know which one, and I swear I didn't even know. I didn't notice anything at all. And then I got really tired afterwards, and I started to close my eyes. And as I'm closing my eyes, there's this, it's a man energy, but it's a creepy man. And he's leaning down, smiling at me as my lids are closing. And I thought, I must be really, really tired. And then it just started with the night terrors and shit in the house getting thrown. It was scary. It really was. So I got that one. That wasn't hard to get rid of, but it scared me with doing readings and being more prepared and protected. You know.
Attachments are real because I had one I carried for about 35 years and didn't realize it. I had done an investigation back in 1983. No, not 80, excuse me, 1981. It was actually about 2 months before I had the Bigfoot encounter. And I was doing an investigation down where I used to work at outside of Ellicott City. And that I don't know if you're familiar with the Tapsco River, but that area down there south of Ellicott City had a lot of plantations and such up and down along that river.
Oh yeah,
at the time, and there was a somewhat famous individual who owned property there, a guy by the name of John Kennedy. He was actually the Navy Secretary for Millard Fillmore, and he had a lot of famous people visiting there. I mean, Edgar Allan Poe would spend time there. Washington Irving spent some time there. Well-known writers and people who, because the guy was supposed to have one of the most extensive libraries in the country at the time. Well, anyway, that place was washed out back in 1869. So the family, Kennedy had passed since then, but the daughter Elizabeth was, or Catherine, excuse me, Catherine was still living there. And I believe she died there because people were seeing this apparition along the river. And people were talking about it. And I eventually found someone who said they had seen this thing. So me and another guy went down there at night in the evening. It was getting close to getting dark. It was in the summer. And we were trying to pick up, I was trying to pick up the energy around it. I didn't see anything. I heard a few weird things, but it was really calm, warm night, summer night. And the only thing you're really hearing is the water in the river going by you. But anyway, we were sitting there after being there a couple hours. And all of a sudden, I looked up out towards the river because there was about an acre of land in front of me between the road and then the river itself. I saw this apparition move across the field, walk down toward the road, and move back up. And when it started moving back up, I started getting a good idea of what it was. It was a woman, and she was dressed in mid 1800s dress. She had a blue dress on. She had a white sweater or type of shawl, and she had a white bonnet on. And he was moving towards us. Now, it wasn't really fast. It was just steady, and it was moving. And I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe this is just residual. I don't know. I mean, I didn't really get a good pickup of what the energy was. So what I did, I got up being stupid and started walking towards it. And for whatever reason, I got maybe within 15 foot or so from her, and she literally rushed me and went right through me.
Oh shit.
And when that happened, I got violently sick. And the reason I got sick was I had this real putrid honeysuckle odor all through me. I mean, it was that bad. My wife wouldn't sleep in the same bedroom with me for a week afterwards because it was that bad. We couldn't get rid of the smell. But anyway, after I had that experience, and I finally got home because I was feeling awful. I started looking in and researching, and that's when I found out about the family and about Catherine and the descriptions. I started going down to Maryland Historical Society and doing some research then. and I believe it was her. I believe it was Catherine Kennedy, and I don't know if she ever married. I don't think she did. And but anyway, 35 years later, a friend of mine who I have worked with several times, who's a psychic, her and I were sitting here talking, and she told me, she said, "You know, I think you've got an attachment. I'm picking something up off you." And I'm thinking, no. I mean, if I had an attachment, I'd know about it. Well, apparently, I didn't know about it, and she believes, and she described what she was sensing and seeing. It was exactly what I had seen.
Oh,
And
wow.
I remember back to 83, and she did eventually remove it from me. Uh, I was laid up for a full 24 hours because I was just exhausted. It was like somebody took my soul out of me, you know.
Mhm.
But I eventually got straightened out. But I do kind of feel that the attachment was some type of protection somehow, because or she wanted to protect me or whatever. Because after that had happened, I started getting all kinds of illnesses and surgeries and all kinds of stuff going on. So
Oh, no.
yeah, I think that it may have been beneficial, but when she took it out of me and moved it on, I felt awful.
I think some of them do protect you. I think a lot of people have attachments, and some will find out, some won't. It's because it's nothing that you're taught about, and you don't know. I think it's very common, and I think a lot of I'll shut up. I'm sorry. I
Oh,
think
it's
a
all
lot
right.
of
Oh, okay.
serial killers.
No,
You
and it's
know,
just not people too. I mean, objects.
oh yeah,
Objects can pick up attachments. I can't go into an antique store anymore.
they freak me out. Yeah,
I mean, it's like I'm being pulled from all sides. And in fact, when I go to a funeral, it's terrible. I'm
yeah,
sitting there at my dad's funeral, and it's like I've got things all beside me trying to get my attention. And it was just very disconcerting.
yep,
There'll be times when I'm laying back at night trying to go to sleep, and I'm seeing faces. It's like I'm looking through a window and I'm seeing faces come up, and they're showing themselves, not saying anything, but then they'll go away and somebody else will come. Happens a lot.
yeah.
I've gone through that for many years, even as a kid. So yeah, I just believe that these are energies that are just trying to get your attention as well. As far as attachments being common, yeah, I think they are fairly common.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of times when you go into a situation where somebody does have a problem, that's probably the first thing you want to think about,
Those,
possibly being an attachment, because you got to go back in their history and find out when they started feeling different or things started going on. And many times it is an attachment.
mhm. I agree. Oh,
It's time.
oh, damn it! All right, it's been an hour. Well, you got to come back on and talk some. This is fun.
Oh, you can always ask me to come back. I'll come back.
Oh well, yeah, we'll be asking because this was not long enough, and yeah, you have 1,000 stories, and we have at least 100 questions. Everyone really wants to thank Lon for coming out tonight. He's a great guest. He's always the font of wisdom and full of information and great anecdotes. And we'll be back next Tuesday.
Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Wait, but hold on. Tomorrow.
What is this,
So,
Wednesday?
Yeah.
Okay, we have
two shows.
we have
tomorrow.
2 shows tomorrow. So we will get our act straight and send out all the links and stuff. But anyway, Lon, thank you so much for being here.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
All right.